Emperor Tiber Septim, also called Hjalti Early Beard, General Talos Stormcrown, the Red King, and Ysmir, was a dragonborn and the first emperor of the Septim Empire. He is regarded as one of Tamriel's most famous figures, having been the only one in history to unite the continent. Starting with his service under the Cyrodiilic Emperor, Khulakain, Tiber Septim fought under the name General Talos to unify Cyrodiil, eventually succeeding or usurping Khulakain and becoming emperor. After his unification of Tamriel, an effort that culminated in the birth of the Third Empire, he ended the lengthy interregnum and began the Third Era. Tiber Septim gave his name to the lineage of Cyrodiil emperors, the Septims. Upon his death, he became the deity Talos and took his place in the pantheon of the Nine Divines. The most commonly accepted story within the Empire is that Tiber Septim was born in Atmora as Talos, meaning Stormcrown in Elnofex, hence Talos Stormcrown. He had a brother named Agnarith. He grew up in Skyrim and learned the ways of war there. Talos became general of the Colovian estates under King and later Emperor Khulakain. General Talos met the combined army of Skyrim and High Rock, who were hostile to Khulakain on the cliffs of Sancra Tor. The Skyrim army joined him when they saw him use the Thu'um and knew him to be blood of the dragon and heir to the empires of men. However, there are also records that state that the Nords joined Tiber Septim after he had caught them off guard. Khulakain and Talos conquered West Cyrodiil in 1 year. No one could stand before Talos' storms. They marched east and the enemy's battle mages surrendered before their armies. In 2 E854, they conquered the Imperial City and thus gained full control over Cyrodiil. That year, a High Rock Nightblade managed to assassinate Khulakain and slit Talos' throat, burning the palace in the process. Talos survived, but he could no longer shout, instead leading armies with a whisper. At one point, Talos had an affair with Berenzia of Morrowind, who became pregnant. Talos quickly had the unborn child aborted to prevent conflict with his legitimate heir. The human kingdoms were conquered, even Hammerfell, which was predicted to be an arduous task. After sending the commander of the new West Navy, Amiel Richten, to Stros Mackay, the Battle of Stros Mackay had begun. Richten's assassin Dram shot a poisoned arrow at Hammerfell's Prince Aetor, killing him and defeating the last of the Crown resistance. After this, Tiber Septim appointed Amiel Richten as provisional governor of the island. After the conquest of Hammerfell, Tiber turned to Morrowind. Following some initial skirmishes, and after increasing internal friction between Morrowind's great houses, a treaty was signed by either Tiber or Zurin Arctus. This included Vivec giving the Numidium to Tiber in exchange for a higher degree of autonomy and self-rule for Morrowind. The acquisition of the Numidium allowed Tiber to conquer the Somerset Isles, completing the conquest of Tamriel in 2 E896. Upon conquering all of Tamriel, Tiber declared that the following year a new era should begin, and thus the Third Era began. Tiber Septim's 38-year reign is described as lawful, pious, and glorious age. Tiber Septim is known for reviving the cult of the One and erecting a temple dedicated to it within the Imperial City. Tiber also published the Pocket Guide to the Empire in an attempt to make his newly found empire feel more united. Tiber Septim died in 3 E38 and was succeeded by his grandson, Pelagius. If the statement that he is from Alcair is true, then he was most likely a Breton. It is said that Emperor Sepphoris Septim II was the first emperor of the Septim dynasty to have been neither a Breton nor having spent any childhood in High Rock, which would mean that Tiber Septim could have been a Breton. According to Keir Joe, General Stormcrown was a Breton, not a Nord. Kine also refers to him as a Manmer in Michael Kirkbride's C0DA, and Bretons are both Man and Mer. If the statement that he is from Atmora is true, then he was most likely an Atmoran, or Nord. Some sources say that Septim was an Atmoran, but not a Nord. Heimskr says that Tiber Septim was a Nord. During the Tiber Wars, it was said that Tiber Septim was not an Imperial, which was not uncommon for emperors during the interregnum regardless. His avatar, Wolf, however, is also an imperial, who is stated to look like the figure on the Septim coins, which would imply that Tiber Septim might have been an imperial. Tiber Septim was described by Queen Berenzia. He was of average height, half a head shorter than Symmachus, well knit of figure, and flexible of movement. He had a winning smile, bright blue eyes, and his hair was stark white, while his face was lined and weathered. Berenzia presumed his age ranged from 40 to 60 years old at the time. Other features of Tiber Septim were a ruthless brow and powerful chin. Talos died in 3E38 and was succeeded by his grandson, Pelagius. After his death, Septim is believed by most to have ascended to godhood. He became Talos again, the god of war and governance, for after a lifetime of war, he had united Tamriel for the first time in history. Upon his ascension, the 8 divines became the 9. During the Great War between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion, however, peace was agreed upon with one of the conditions, being that the Empire ceases to recognize Talos as one of the divines. After word got out that the Empire wasn't enforcing the Talos ban, the Thalmor had all shrines to him removed from the temples in towns loyal to the Empire. The Stormcloaks in the province of Skyrim reject the white gold concordat that instates this law. Tiber Septim had a bloodline, but it went extinct in the main line with the death of Pelagius Septim. The line then switched to Pelagius's cousin Kintira and her heirs, who were the descendants of Tiber Septim's brother, Agnerith. Tiber Septim was the founder of the Septim dynasty, which ruled Tamriel for the entire Third Era, until the bloodline died out with Martin Septim. Tribunal goddess Almalexia commissioned an expansion of Mournhold as a reaction to Septim's rising greatness, returning the city to its former glory since its destruction in 1E 2920. The expansion was finished in the early Third Era. An aspect of Tiber Septim appeared in 3E 427 as a retired Imperial Legionnaire named Wolf. He aids the Nerevarine by asking him to keep his lucky coin while they journey to Red Mountain on their quest to defeat Dagoth-Ur. Later, an Imperial priest in Ebonheart tells the Nerevarine that Wolf may have actually been a divine manifestation of Tiber Septim, and that this visitation may be a sign of great doom for the hero. Wolf's dialogue regarding the weakening Empire and Old Emperor later occurred during the Oblivion Crisis of 3E 433, with the Septim bloodline ending with Martin Septim's sacrifice. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive on Tiber Septim, consider becoming a member to support the channel. Membership helps us keep bringing you these detailed breakdowns, plus you'll get perks like early access to new videos and exclusive updates. Hit that join button if you're interested, and we'll catch you in the next one. Viewer.